You're listening to The Artist Athlete, episode 129. This podcast is dedicated to Circus. It's a place for professionals in the industry to share their stories, viewpoints, and information, and a place for outsiders to get a sneak peek into this world. Hey friends, fans, and foes, I'm Shannon McKenna. I'm the host of the Artist Athlete podcast and the founder of theartistathlete.com. I've got a ton of energy today. I just got off a call with Julie Marshall, Patreon favorite, and Patreons go on over to the Patreon RSS feed. And you can hear Julie and Marshall and I's conversation. It's really good, really funny. What is Patreon? What is their RSS feed? Well, get this. There is a whole other layer to the Artist Athlete podcast that is going on right now. It is an extra episode that happens every single week that is behind the scenes. It's a little like secret tea from my life. It's an extra podcast episode that if you are a Patreon giving any amount of money, you have access to. So if you're interested and you want to support the podcast, go to patreon.com/theartistathlete and you can get access to so much stuff that you asked for and some stuff that you probably didn't ask for also. And I'm sorry about that. And also you're welcome. Patreon.com/theartistathlete. My guest today is Dominique Jando. And before I even read Dominique's bio, I just want to be very clear from the get-go that the Artist Athlete podcast always set out to be a place where many different people from many different points of view about circus could express those points of view. And Dominique is a very honored person in certain circus circles, and his viewpoint is not his alone, but expressed by many. And even if you don't share it with him, I think it's important to know where he's coming from, hear his story, and hear his opinions, so you can agree with them or not. Dominique Jando began his involvement with the performing arts more than 5 decades ago in his native France, where he first stepped into a circus ring as a clown in the legendary Circus Medrano in Paris. Later, he pursued an artistic and administrative career both in theater and circus. In 1974, as the General Secretary of Paris Cultural Center, he participated with Alex Grus in the creation of France's first professional circus school, of Le Cirque à l'Ancienne. Oh man, my French was getting so good. And of Le Cirque à l'Ancienne, which eventually became the French National Circus and is considered the catalyst of the European New Circus movement. He moved to New York in 1983 to join the Big Apple Circus and served as its associate artistic director for 20 years. He then worked as creative director of Circus Center in San Francisco, California. Now an independent circus arts consultant and writer, he's the vice president and artistic director of the Lone Star Circus in Dallas, Texas, and serves on the boards of Circus Bella and the Circus Center in San Francisco. 20 years. He then worked as creative director of Circus Center in San Francisco, California. Now an independent circus arts consultant and writer, he's the vice president and artistic director of the Lone Star Circus in Dallas, Texas, and serves on the boards of Circus Bella and the Circus Center in San Francisco. He's also a founder and curator of Circopedia.org, one of the greatest things that's ever happened to the Artist Athlete podcast, thank God for Circopedia, an international online circus encyclopedia originally funded by the Big Apple Circus. A circus and popular entertainment historian, Dominique has published several books and written many articles on the subject, both in Europe and the US. The Russian translation of his Histoire mondiale du cirque is used as a textbook at Moscow's Circus and Variety State College and the GITIS Theater Institute. He often lectures on circus and popular entertainment, teaches classical European clowning, is an international circus consultant for the Guinness World Records, and is a founding member of the Festival Mondial du Cirque du Demain, an international circus competition that is held every winter in Paris since 1977, with the exception of the past 2 winters because of the pandemic. He has served on the juries of international circus festivals in Europe, Russia, Mexico, and Israel. Dominique is the recipient of the 2016 Elevate Circus Award. He is married to the award-winning trapeze artist and aerial arts coach, Elena Panova, who is also on this show. They presently live with their 2 cats, Manushka and Polina, in San Francisco, California. Whew. Here's my interview with Dominique Jando. Dominique Jando, welcome to the Artist Athlete podcast.
Thank you.
Yes. I always like for the guests to introduce themselves. So I will read your bio at the beginning and tell the audience a bit about you. But in your own words, how would you explain what you do to someone else?
Well, what I do mainly right now, it's writing, but about circus, by the way, and researching. But before that, I've been involved in the circus all my professional life, although I have been also involved with the theater, so I'm a bit dual there. But circus has always been my passion. I think the first time I went to the circus, I was 5 years old, which makes it to 1950 something. My first clear memories of a show was actually seeing Buster Keaton on the ring of Cirque Medrano in Paris, which led me to become a clown. And I worked in France with Cirque Jean Richard, who was a very famous actor who managed and owned 4 circuses. And I worked for him a little bit because I knew him from my father, who was a movie producer. And we share a common passion, of course, which was the circus. Then I worked with the Paris Cultural Center, with which we created the circus school in Paris in 1974, and Le Cirque à l'Ancienne of Alexis Grus was one of the catalysts of the new circus movement in Europe. Mm-hmm. And although now it's actually they are still, no, it's very classical because they are equestrian. There is nothing more classic in the circus than equestrians. But what they do is quite extraordinary now, which is called the Folie Grus. And it is really good new circus, really very advanced, with horses. And
let me stop you right there for a minute. I want to go. Yeah. You've already said so much, and I have so many questions about what you've already said. So you started as a clown.
Yeah.
Did you have any formal training yourself?
Well, there was no circus school before I started one in 1974.
Right.
So it's to have a formal training. At the time you had either to go to a gym, which was where circus people trained, or to be in a circus family or join the circus somehow. Now, clowning is something different, especially in Europe. It's not, you speak, you play music. It's more theatrical than just purely visual, although it's visual in part. But it's less stupid than the notion of clowning in America for many, many years. So the thing that helped me in circus in general is that I was born in Paris, and in Paris until 1970, let's say, but really until 1963, when Medrano was still open, they closed in 63, we had 2 permanent circus, the Cirque d'Hiver, which still exists, and Medrano, which unfortunately disappeared, and it was a magical circus. And those circuses changed their program every 3 weeks or every month. So I used to go to the circus when I became a teenager. I used to go to the circus every week. And I used to go in both circus. So I saw a lot of acts over the years. And I saw also a lot of clowns. And there is a tradition in French clowning, which is the clown entrée, which I teach here in San Francisco from time to time, and I taught in New York. And the clown entrée is a repertoire of short scenes with a beginning, a middle, and an end that actually at the time everybody in Paris knew. They knew the end. There were no surprise. And which was interesting, it's to see clown teams play it because they all played it in a different way. So you learned a lot by just watching them because you knew what works, what doesn't work, what is so-so, what is really funny. And you learn the technique by watching. And then Medrano created a sort of embryo of circus school, which I immediately joined. And I learned the technique and the subtlety of the art of clowning with some of the greatest clowns of the time, which came to Medrano to help my partners and me to develop something. But I really learned, like the good way of learning comedy is to go in front of an audience and bomb miserably. And it's really how you learn comedy and clowning. So we flopped majestuously for about 2 or 3 years. And then we found ourselves and found how you can get an audience love you and react to what you do. And after that, it was fine. And I did that for about 7 years.
Wow. Since you are a circus historian, I would love you to provide some insight as to why Paris, that's such a unique, especially for a North American. I grew up in the States and now live in Montreal, where there are circuses. But even, I mean, part of it is the global pandemic. But even before, there weren't weekly changes in circus. It wasn't as prevalent or it isn't as prevalent now to be able to go see something every week. What is it about France? I think specifically.
It's not France necessarily. If you live in Moscow today, you have two circuses performing there. They change program for the Circus Nicoline, which is the old circus, which is actually very modern now. They change program every 3 months. Production, because they are very rich production. They couldn't change every week as they did at the time. And Zapashny, the new circus or Bolshoi circus, they change program sometimes every day because they create a lot of show and perform them for 1 week and sometimes with a different show in matinee, which is better for children. And then they change the show. Meanwhile, they prepare another one. So if you are in Moscow, you can see a lot of things. And then the quality is really at the highest possible level. But in Paris, we had 2 circuses when I was young. Before the war, there were up to 5 circuses. So it was the circus capital of the world. And you had Berlin, which was not bad before the war.
Right.
We had circus and big variety theater, which were actually a combination of circus and variety. So it was also very rich. And then you have circus building in France. You still have, 5 or 6 circus buildings, which are still there, not used for circus, unfortunately, unless sporadically, but not on a regular basis. In Russia, you have 60 circus buildings still working. So it's a question of what you do in a given country. And circus buildings before the war, there were plenty. Then in Germany, everything was destroyed, of course, and by the bombing at the end of the war, so nothing was left. They only rebuilt the circus in Munich, Circus Kronenborg. That's the only circus building in Germany. In England, you have 2 two circus buildings that works, one in Great Yarmouth and the other in Blackpool. And Great Yarmouth has different production during the year. So it's a question of tradition in Europe. The real tradition of the circus is not traveling, although it has existed for a long time, but that was the mud shows,
Yes.
The ground circus, you did that in buildings, and the great circus company traveled from one building to another. And with the Parisian circus being case apart. But in Russia, it's about the same. The two Moscow circus buildings are really circus of their own, and their show can travel in the 60 circuses of Russia. And St. Petersburg, which has the oldest circus in Russia, building, Circus in Italy, they present shows which come from Nikulin, the Bolshoi, or the show like this. So it's a different approach to the circus, and circus stands in France and in Europe in general are very comfortable. It's nothing to do with the concept. I mean, yes, until you go and see the Big Apple Circus in New York, which was very, very European. It's a comfortable circus, or the Cirque du Soleil tents are very comfortable, but that's a European standard. It's so.
Yes, I remember the first time I really understood that. I think I went to Cirque d'Hiver, and I was like, "Oh, the red velvet inside, the ushers, everything felt like
it's an
going
opera.
to the opera." Yeah, that's it.
And it's a totally different culture.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm interested.
In America, the culture of the circus. When you speak to, I'm not speaking to people in the new circus movement or whatever, but the ordinary American, circus is human cannonballs, clown tying each other,
Yes,
lion trainer attacking their charges instead of being in a good harmony with them, and for sure. But it's the macho side of American circus, which is quite for me annoying, to tell you the truth.
You can take a man out of Paris, but you certainly cannot take Paris out of a man. I love it. So going back to your life, I kind of imagine that this interview is going to switch a little bit back and forth because you have so much knowledge, like as a lived person, 50 years in the circus, but also because of your studies, your research, your writings. So I'm going to try to take advantage of both during this interview. You did clowning, and was being in the clowning troupe what brought you outside of Paris to see the circus buildings in Moscow or Berlin or other places?
It's, I've been interested in the circus as far as I can remember. So when I say I was 5 when I saw my first show, because it's the first time that I remember seeing a show, which was at the Cirque d'Hiver, and after that many times at Medrano when I was a kid. That was because my father, for a reason it's too long to explain because it's another story. My father, who was in show business, but movies are not much to do with the circus, but had a childhood friend who was a very, very famous clown, whose father was an even more famous clown, sort of legendary figure of clowning, who happened to be a friend of my grandfather, who was a politician and a lawyer. So it's already a little bit weird. But the thing is, my grandfather was a Freemason, high-ranking Freemason. And this clown, who was Little Walter, was also a high-ranking Freemason. So I guess at some point he needed a lawyer in Angoulême, France, and he went to the lodge and said, go to this guy. And they remained friends all their lives. So my father has a great appreciation for circus people and the circus world and circus. He was not a circus fan, but you know, when I went to the circus with my father, instead of doing with, unfortunately, most parents do, it's say, "Oh, look at the little pony! Oh, look at the clown!" Of my father said, "You see this aerial act? It's better than the one you saw 1 month ago because."
Mm.
And I have known that since I was a little kid, and all my life I've seen the circus that way. And so it's I have been interested all my life. I always knew that I had to be in the circus. It just I like show business in general. I like theater. I like variety. Not singers, but real the old variety. Uh, I uh, I liked movies. I liked everything which was entertaining. But circus was, I did a bit of all actually, but circus was the thing that I always wanted to do.
Okay.
I don't know
So,
what was the question at the beginning, but
well, the question was, so you started in Paris,
yeah.
performing, and then when did you start going internationally?
Oh, and because of my interest for those things, and
Yeah, but like, how old were you? What was the
I
opportunity? Like,
I guess I was probably 18. The first
okay.
time I really went by myself to see something. I went to London to see Bertram Hill's Circus, which was the epitome of class and perfection, in my opinion, in the circus world.
Hmm.
And I was lucky to catch the 3 last season, and then disappear, unfortunately, which was very elegant, aristocratic. I mean, it's some of my best circus memories ever with anything that Medrano did. So that was the first thing. And from there, I went to see whatever I could. I didn't only go to Paris. I caught every tenting circus passing by. But at some point when I was 20, I guess, uh, because I have a life which is quite incredible when I think of it from time to time. I was asked by a fabulous character who was called Louis Merlin, who was the guy who had developed commercial radio in France before the war and after. It was sort of legendary idea man. And he was the president of an association which was called La Piste. And La Piste did a gala every year to raise money to help old circus performers, retired circus performers, or circus performers who had an accident anywhere in the world, or foreign circus performer who had an accident on the French soil. And they helped financially and everything. And there was a board of director, and somehow Louis Merlin, because I had published a little satirical magazine on the circus, and with my partner, clown partner at the time, and when Medrano closed, and we sent it to everybody who was known to like circus and was famous, and they all take a subscription. And Louis Merlin contacted me and said, "Well, would you like to join the board of La Piste?" And the board of La Piste were all radio personalities, TV personalities. I was 20, for heaven's sake. And I said, "Well, I don't know. I'm a little... I'm nothing."
Yeah.
And he said, "Yes, but you are interesting. What you do is interesting, and I want to prepare the next generation. So I would like you to join the board." I say, "Okay."
That's a
And then,
fabulous mission, by the way, to have a party every year to fundraise for.
yeah, so we did that for many years. And then, because we also were working in the wings with all the social departments of the French government to have the social security and everything take care of circus people who are not insured, nothing. And we won. We managed to do it. And when that was done, we were to take what is La Piste here for? And the next idea was, let's create, now that it was at the time when the first circus school came, us with Grus and Fratellini, and then the new circus, Roncalli and all those, Cirque du Soleil, all those people were popping up with school in Montreal and elsewhere. We say, why don't we do a festival for young people from circus family or not circus family? And the Paris Festival was created like this. I'm one of the founding member of the Paris Festival, and we switched to the festival from that. So anyway.
And for any listeners who need clarification, the Paris Festival, and you're speaking of the Festival Cirque de Demain.
Yeah.
Yes, interchangeably. Yes.
And so then we produced the festival, and I worked on it for, I don't know how many years, 20 years or so. And when I was in La Piste, I started meeting a lot of interesting people who were interested in the circus and who had a name. Somehow I found myself secretary of the Press Circus and Variety Press Association. I had no idea why. Jacqueline Cartier was a very famous circus critic, theater critic, and dance critic for a major French newspaper. Chose me to do that, but I guess I was young and beautiful and she liked me or something like that. But with that, I knew even more people. And so I was in a milieu who was quite fascinating, actually, with writers, journalists, circus people.
Yeah.
And we decided at some point to go and see circuses elsewhere, including where nobody would go. And we created an association and went with a little group of friends. We went to Moscow, Leningrad, Budapest, did a little tour like this at a time when it was under Brezhnev, nobody went to Russia, and Russia had just invaded Afghanistan. I mean, those were places that no Western European put their feet.
This is still Soviet Union time.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, okay.
Very much so. It was actually very funny. And, I've been to Russia. So that was in 1974. I've been to Russia regularly ever since, and I've seen the change. But actually, at that time, under the hard communist regime, it was very funny. After a while, we knew a lot. I knew a lot of things. A lot of people have plenty of friends in Russia. But so we were, of course, it was so rare to have people from outside coming and see the circus. And the circus was big in Russia. So we were some of guests of honor everywhere. We were taking. So I visited the circus school in Moscow, the Circus College, where Elena was graduated. I visited the circus school in Budapest. We went to the two circuses in Moscow and circus in Budapest, circus in Leningrad, and the year or two later we went to Bucharest. And I mean, we did a sort of several tour of circus, and we discovered how the Moscow Circus School functioned there because nobody knew about it. I mean, they knew in the circus world, you knew it existed, but nobody had ever seen anything.
Right, because this was Soviet Union times, and it was certainly not the time of YouTube or Facebook or any
there was no YouTube
video.
and no Facebook, anything, and people didn't go there, and people didn't even know that existed beside people like us.
Oh, hey there. I just wanted to interrupt this interview real quick to just say one real quick little thing about myself, which is that I am not only the host of the Artist Athlete podcast. No. She is a businesswoman, and I run a whole company dedicated to the education and inspiration of circus artists. That goes from people who are just doing it, weekend warriors, as a hobbyist, recreationally, or if you're a professional, you've put in the hours and you need more resources, go to theartistathlete.com. There are a ton of recorded workshops, online manuals and ebooks, everything you could possibly need from me and from some guests on this show about everything from nutrition to training your shoulders to really specific aerial moves that you need to master. Again, theartistathlete.com. And just because you went there from listening to this podcast, use code PODCAST and get 15% off your entire purchase. That's right. Theartistathlete.com. Use code PODCAST at checkout for 15% off your entire purchase. And have a great day. Back to the episode. So I have to ask, how, even though I feel like you maybe are about to tell me and I don't want to be rude or interrupt, but I don't want to let this go by. When you were seeing circuses in Russia, in Budapest, in these places, how are they different from the circuses back home in Western Europe?
It was just better. Not necessarily the production value, but what you saw was a little bit mind-blowing, as it still is today. So, when we created the school, and then the Cirque à l'Ancienne in Paris, the school we created just when I came back from Moscow, and I was hired by the Paris Cultural Center. I mean, it's all the history of Grus and the Paris Cultural Center, and the Cirque à l'Ancienne and the National Circus, and all these things came right after that, always through this guy, Louis Merlin. When I came back from Moscow, called me and say, Dominique Jando, you know Sylvia Montfort? And I said, yeah, it was a very, very famous actress in Paris. And she was going to head the Paris Cultural Center. And I say, yes, I heard of, I don't know her. I mean, I've seen her.
Right.
I say, okay, she's doing a circus exhibition on the history of the circus, and she asked me to help. So I said, yes, and you are going to meet her. It's how it worked with Merlin. And I said, okay. And so I went to meet her, help her do her exhibition, and there she hired me as general secretary of the Paris Cultural Center, because by then I already had worked in theater for about 3 years. So I was an interesting character, and she wanted to develop the circus stuff after this exhibition because it had such a success that she wanted to do something else. And it's another very long story, but it ended with a meeting with the Grus, whom I knew before, of course, the Grus family, and created the Cirque à l'Ancienne, and which became a sort of Paris institution, and so on. And then I was just coming back from Moscow, and I told Sylvia, what makes the Russian circus so good is they have a school. And she said, okay, let's create a school. That was Sylvia Montfort, no problem. Okay, so we created a school on the Russian model, actually.
Do you still think that's true? That what made the Russians so great, especially at that time? I mean, I remember watching, going deep down on the depths of YouTube and watching an act where a guy balanced his brother. They did head to head, on a tight wire. And the guy,
no, that's nothing.
Bass was smoking a cigarette. He walked up the stairs, down the stairs. They had a whole comedy routine the whole time. I mean, it must have been a 12-minute act.
It was Russian?
Yes.
Well, if you go to Circopedia, check every Russian name on the video thing. There are things of that time, or before even, of that time, in the 70s or even before. Even for me today, suddenly I find old videos, Russian video and thing, and I look at the stuff. I just
So my question, so why, okay, so if we now have more circus schools than ever, if it's...
Yeah, but the thing is not to have plenty of circus schools. The thing is to have good circus schools.
Yes, and so what makes it a good circus school?
Aha! What makes a good circus school? The circus school we create. Now the circus schools in France, National Circus School, Fratellini, and things like that, and circus school in Brussels. There are a few like that, and of course Montreal.
Yeah,
they are good, but they have good teacher. They teach a good technique, but they sort of specialized in creating things for small troupe who are going to work on stage with a lot of theatricality and thing, and which, in my opinion, is not that good because it's like ballet. You learn bar, center for years, the classic stuff, and then you go to modern dance and whatever but you have your vocabulary, which is rich. Before you go to create something, the greatest modern gurus and modern dancers come from ballet. They don't come from nowhere. Besides Isadora Duncan, so it's that the basic. And when Elena created a professional program in San Francisco for that we run for about 7 years, it was created on this Russian model, which is first we selected the people with a very precise thing in terms of strength, acrobatic power, and things like that. They had to have a little past of training somewhere. And then when they were at the school, they were there for 2 to 3 years, according to what they were trying to develop. They did acrobatics, they did ballet, they did improv, which is very good for circus performers, and they did their specialty, and they work 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, and with classes, and the rest of the time they train by themselves. So there you can do something. It's that level of teaching, and you have to have very good teachers too, who have been performers, high level, and or come from gymnastics or come from ballet. But people who know their stuff, not just somebody who has taken a workshop with someone. So the teaching in Montreal is pretty good, but actually they teach with Cirque du Soleil in Vision.
Yes.
They say one model. And Chalon, they teach for a little company who are going, 5 people who are going to travel in jeans and t-shirts, and it's one style,
Okay, but like you said, with the exception of Russia, where there are 60 circus buildings that are built for the intention, I don't think in the U.S. there is a single someone.
The U.S. has always been in the backwater of the circus in terms of performers. So it's it's very difficult in the US to create something, and especially to put that in the mind of people that it's an art form. And unfortunately, I see so many very mediocre stuff nowadays. It's not that we're going to convince people that it's an important art form. The video I uploaded, I think last week, of a Russian video, an acrobatic act of the 60s, I would say. And it starts, you have guys in line. It's a teeterboard act at the end, but you have a guy, facing the audience, and a guy would jump on the shoulder of one guy and do a Arab somersault, lateral somersault from shoulder to shoulder to shoulder. So when you show that and you say, circus is something serious, yes, you believe it.
Yes.
But if you see somebody who hangs from a tissue and it's the 600th that you see, I'm on the board of Circus Center, and there were a show we are going to make very drastic changes. But the show we produced last time, there were 12 tissue acts. it's cute, but with two I would have been fine. The third one, I was already getting a lot of spots on my face, and the seventh, I wanted to kill them. So it's difficult because there is not this tradition in America. You have to create the tradition, and I try to help everyone who is serious about it to try to really develop something. But there are not so many of them, actually.
Well, and it's very challenging
really
to do
understand.
because unlike in Europe, unlike in France, there's no national body
but
that has a gala every year to help
that's one
retired and
of the
injured.
problem. But one of the things that worries me a little bit, it's the circus schools in America are business models in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. I mean, I guess most of them are non-profit. Circus Center is a non-profit.
That's still a business model, though.
It's still a business model. It's not. The thing is not one of the, because it's America. One of the things, if you want to survive, you have to make money. So if you want to make money, you have to teach a lot of shit to a lot of people who come here for fitness, which is good actually, because it's also that give them an idea of what circus is all about. That's not enough. We are trying to make a lot of change at Circus Center with the kids, because the kids don't have good teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And for kids who need really the best possible teachers to start building something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big American problem, but the proliferation of circus schools everywhere can be good in a way to make people discover circus art, but not necessarily good for the future of the circus. And right now, what I see is that the circus families who are really into what they do, which is not always the case, sometimes they are just into survival, but the good ones actually taking over, creating the act, creating good stuff, because they know how to train, they know how to teach, they know it's difficult, and they can start young. So you see incredible things in Europe right now within some great circus families.
That's so
The
interesting.
Grus, the Richter in Hungary, Italian circus family, there are plenty. And these people, they are doing what the school don't do, which is a little bit sad, because the school would, if well done, would be better equipped to go into this creative process.
Right. Theoretically.
Because the secret of the Moscow Circus School is to have put together people who came from gymnastics or ballet or whatever with old top-notch circus performers to teach. And that gave a result, because the top-notch circus professor had a very strong training and very good technique. Gymnastic people could bring part of the technique. If you teach ballet, if you have an old ballet dancer teaching you ballet, it's better than if you have somebody who did a workshop 3 weeks and trying to teach you dance.
I do have to ask, though, it's on the top of my mind because I just finished up an interview with Marco Mora, who was a capoeira and breakdancer who went to Festival Cirque du Soleil with a breakdancing contortion straps act. He had no foundation in ballet, of course. He's from the streets of Sao Paulo, it's in breakdance. And I also think about the Mongolians, who have, a deep-rooted tradition that's not ballet or gymnastics. And I'm wondering...
but they do, the Mongolian. They do ballet when they study in Ulaanbaatar.
They do, but but I think that what they're doing is not strict. They're not doing Balanchine, okay?
Yeah, no, but you don't need.
But my question is do you think there's space in circus for different technique or different people who are not informed by like a Western idea of technique the way we know it? Or does circus have to be informed by that?
Yes, circus has to be informed. Theater has to be informed by its past. Dance has to be informed by its past. You don't, for me, when we speak of ballet, ballet is not there for people to become dancer. It's just a question of body position and movement and everything, to be able to have a strong hold on that, of your movements. And ballet is a perfect way of doing that. But that's it. But if you don't know the past, if you don't know your tradition, if you don't know, how things have been developed, you have to reinvent everything from scratch. And that puts you 300 years behind. So,
unless you're in a culture like Indian Malakam is another example of, like a culture or something that has, these very deep roots that I think sometimes
but circus has very deep roots in a way, but you have to know them. Circus is not something new. I mean, the circus, as it is, what is called circus, is 300 years old. But what is part of the circus is much older than that. It's you look at the Chinese acrobat.
Sure.
2,000 more years old.
Yeah. So I guess my question is there space for others who don't come from that tradition then?
Yeah, sure. But you have to have somebody who teach them the tradition. If not, sometimes I see people have this wonderful idea at the festival, for instance, coming from those circus schools in Paris. People who came with those weird ideas, and obviously they don't know that it had been done before, but better. And if they knew that, they could have gone the next step instead of being 3 steps below. We had a laugh some years ago with a friend of mine, Raffaele De Ritis, who is also a circusist, but also a circus guy, theater guy, who lives in Italy. And we speak very often because he works on Circopedia for me. And once he was at the Paris Festival, I was not there. And he said, I saw these extraordinary things. There are 2 guys who did a perch pole act, and they thought they had invented the discipline, and everybody in the audience saw it was so new, so original. And those people have no idea of what they are doing, obviously, because perch pole acts, it has existed
for a very long time.
Yeah. So it's, it's just, how do you want things to evolve if you try to restart everything from scratch constantly, instead of looking what has been done and trying to find how you can improve on it, and find the people who are going to help you to improve on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's how the arts evolve. It's not by having ideas. Having ideas, it's easy. Doing something good, it's more difficult.
I hear what you're saying. I also do wonder, though, still, if there's a space for people who didn't come from Moscow or come from, like I think about, again, like the South American circus, or people in Mexico who are doing these flying trapeze.
There are plenty of room. Look at the duo Mouvance, Hélène Turcotte. I don't know if you know the duo Mouvance. Mouvance, Hélène, she just went to the Montreal Circus School because she thought it was fun and different. And she even didn't know what she wanted to do. Same for him, by the way. And then they saw Elena when she did the Paris Festival, and everybody from the Montreal Circus School saw the eye, and we were all flabbergasted at the time because it was totally new. And she decided she would be an aerialist, and she became a great aerialist with a gold medal in Paris, silver crown in Monte Carlo, and so forth. But she didn't come from the circus. She didn't come from anywhere. But she had the inspiration. She saw something.
Mm-hmm.
She had the teachers, and she had the environment, which at the time was less focused on Cirque du Soleil than it is now. And she became one of the greatest aerial acts in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And especially at the beginning, they were swinging. They stopped because it was too difficult, but they were swinging in their act. So, yeah, there's plenty of room. And I know plenty of people like that. The thing is not to believe it's going to be easy, and not to believe that you are creating something new. You have to, learn about what has been done, try to understand how it's done, and work very, very hard. It takes, to do a really good act, it takes 2 or 3 years of hard work.
Yeah.
Not 1 month. So
Yes.
it's a question of methodology and finding the right people to teach you. One of the problem I see very often, it's when you are taught by somebody who has never performed on a very professional level, which means touring internationally and performing every night. It's very hard to understand what is needed, because these people can tell you, because they have the experience, they have tried, they have seen bad ones, they have seen good ones. Even the greatest of them have somebody who is still trying to emulate. Because for a reason, Elena had plenty of models like that for her. They were the greatest. And sometimes when I see what they did, say, okay, they are fine, but in a way, Elena was better. But she doesn't see it this way at all, because those people inspired her, and she wanted to emulate them. And you have to be like this. So if I went to the circus every week. So I saw plenty of acts. I understood the difference between acts and things. If you see the Cirque du Soleil every 2 years and think you have seen Circus, it's not enough. And you have, it's one of the reasons why I created Circopedia, actually. It's because it was impossible on YouTube, unless you did a lot of research, to find what you really needed to find. And then the information which came with it was wrong. So I created Circopedia just to put together interesting videos and give information of those people when it's possible, which is correct.
It's a brilliant resource. It has helped this podcast tremendously. So thank you for it. I appreciate it. It has made my job much easier.
But again, I never insist too much on that. You have to know what has been done before thinking you are doing something
new. So back to your journey. Since the U.S. is this horrible cesspool of where circus goes to die in the mud.
No.
I'm just kidding.
But
what brought you here? How did you come to settle in?
I was imported by the Big Apple Circus.
Okay. All right. So New York first.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I stayed with the Big Apple Circus for 20 years. And then I was a little bit burnt out after 20 years of doing.
What were you doing with them? Performing?
I was associate artistic director. I was the associate of Paul Binder. I did talent scouting. I helped write the show. I helped direct the show, and so forth. But the level of the Big Apple Circus was quite high at the time, because we had to compete with Broadway, with Radio City Musical, Christmas show, and things like that. And so it was not an easy task to do a new production each year at that level.
Yes.
So, which was fascinating for many years. And then we became so big and a little bit too corporate that at the end I was tired. I didn't have the fun I had for many, many years anymore. And because it was so corporate, I couldn't do the way I wanted to do them in my work. So, I was looking for other opportunity, and then I was imported in San Francisco.
I see. Where you came to the San Francisco Circus Center.
I went to Circus. I was heading the circus school at Circus Center, but it was at the time when Circus Center was going from one near bankruptcy to another near bankruptcy until it went bankrupt. And so after 2 years, they couldn't pay me anymore, and it was going nowhere.
No.
And so that was it. But by then, I had given a job to Elena, who was retiring from performing. So she's the one who kept the contact, and I helped her with the professional program that I managed with her. And then I didn't care too much, and finally, not long ago, I joined the board because they wanted somebody who actually knew something about the circus.
Congratulations and thank you for joining the board. I've heard other interviews with you, and I'm very interested to hear your definition of circus. I feel like it's something that people kind of hate to define these days, but I almost feel like it's more important than ever as there start to be a lot of crossover with music, with dance, with the theater. What is pure circus to you?
It's very difficult, because if you want to define the circus with the meaning of the word and the classic circus, it's an equestrian show interspersed with acrobats, aerialists, juggler, clowns, whatever. And it's performed in a ring, which is circular, thus circus.
Yes.
Because of the horses. So that's the real definition of circus. Now, Cirque du Soleil doesn't have horses, and in my opinion, it is a circus.
Okay.
The thing so it's, in that case, it's an acrobatic show performed in the round with Aerialist, something like that. The perform in the round and the locale for me, that's very important, because if you perform on stage, you are not going to have the Volzhansky high wire act with people, or even to get more modern. Now everybody does try to do sling, And if you want to see a sling act, put the word on Circopedia and look. The Russian one would do that, going at 30 meters high and hanging by a toe.
Oh, do you mean like a cloud swing?
No. It's
like
those sort of tissue with a loop.
Oh, yes. I know. Yes.
And so that you cannot do on a stage. On a stage, you are going to go maximum, not much, maybe 4 meters.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
You cannot do anything. And if you want to do a teeterboard act with things which are impressive, you cannot do it in the stage. I'm a work with the Lone Star Circus in Dallas. We work on stage. And for us, it's always a nightmare, because when we have an act which needs some height, like a perch pole act, we have to find solution, because it doesn't work on stage. So we put it in the house usually, but we have to put a way to have some safety lines and something, because it becomes quite dangerous in the middle of the crowd. And there are plenty of acts we would like to have. We had a wonderful Russian bar act, and we realized that the guys, Russian palki, the wow.
Yeah, with the flyer in the middle.
We realized that the guy couldn't do anything, because just jumping, he was already in the rafters. We couldn't take the act, and it was available and not too expensive. Just so it's you cannot do anything. So the locale is very important. Circus is not done to be performed on stage. And I see Abigail Munn with Circus Bella. I'm on the board of her organization. We are looking into buying a tent.
Okay.
Just to be able to do, I mean, we do in the summer free shows in the parks on a ring and with a little portico, which gives more possibility, if you will, but it's a very limited budget. But we have already done one show for Christmas, and we are going to do another one for about 2 months in San Francisco at Christmas time. And we rented a tent, but we are looking to buying one, which is the one we need. And because if not, all what we want to present, we can't.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the real big stuff other than a tissue, a static trapeze, hoop, and a juggler who doesn't juggle too high.
Yes, yeah, which means not too many objects, right?
No. So it limits the form so much to perform on stage.
See.
So you have to have the right venue, and that is quite a problem. If you are on the Radio City Musical, it's fine.
Right, of course.
There is the space, but
and I think about that a lot with acts too. I remember once being in Paris at the Paris Festival and seeing it was a Russian swing act. I don't remember the name of the act. It was a beautiful act. It was all women.
Oh yeah,
they were in these
blue. Course. Yeah.
You know the one I'm
dress. Yeah, I know it very well.
Gorgeous. And I was like, I never get to see acts like that coming out of circus schools, especially because it's too expensive to have an ensemble like that. You know, to pay everybody.
It's a troupe, but these people can work in circuses. They are not going to work in your little 5-person companies.
Yes,
but it comes from a school.
Yes, it comes from
it came from the studio, the Zapashny or Nikulin studio. I don't know which one.
In Russia.
And those girls were former gymnasts. And they were trained by circus people, the right way. And right now, just now at the Budapest Circus Festival, which just ended, I'm trying desperately to find a good video of that, but they had an all-women teeterboard act, which everybody said was absolutely mind-blowing.
Cool.
And they also, it's a Russian act, and
of course.
They were trained by a guy whom I know, and they come from the circus world and circus studio, which is very different from the all-female teeterboard act that the Chinese did some years ago, boosting 6 women high, but you could have played guitar on the safety line. She arrived on the top, slow motion, So, but the Russian girls don't need that.
Right.
They do the real thing.
But I'd have to say, it kind of makes sense that these schools that are not Russian can't train. It would be almost what's the word I'm looking for? It would be cruel. Cruel's not the word, but impractical maybe to train people for venues that they can't perform in.
Yeah, but of course. But the thing, it's why I say the venue is important.
Yeah, sure.
You cannot continue trying to create things for small theaters. It's it just creatively speaking, it goes nowhere. It's totally sterile.
Well, creatively, I feel like it does, but it dilutes the art form. It dilutes the circus.
Yeah, the problem is that the way of dealing with this problem, which I've seen in many, many shows, is to try to put theatrics around, to have a...
Right.
So you replace the skills by the theatrics. And that's not what circus is about. If you want to do theater, do theater. Mm-hmm. I remember one show which was so bad. You remember during the Iraqi war, this notorious picture of prisoner being piled up in their jail with
Yes.
a girl officer who was laughing and took the picture. So they wanted to make a stand, and they had this acrobatic act in which they did a pyramid and that was meant to recall that event. So the problem is that they were unable to do a proper pyramid. So it was all shaky and it was laughable. But so they were playing the theatrics instead of trying to do a proper pyramid. And what do you want to do with that? That's not circus. That's a joke. And for me, I think it's insulting for the circus arts.
Interesting. So your solution is build more circus buildings.
Oh, that would be
But in Dominique's ideal world, to save the circus, what do we do? Build more buildings. Give people more money.
Buildings are perfect for circus. When you see the Bolshoi Circus in Moscow, the ring goes down and come an ice ring, goes down, come a swimming pool, come a ring for magician with trapdoors everywhere.
Yes, yeah.
And a ring for the horses and like that. And that's a tool. You really can do something with that. But you don't need to go that far. But you need the space. And if you don't have the space, you're so limited.
But you could see that in Las Vegas, as you said. Cirque du Soleil. Okay.
Soleil actually had the theater built for their own use. So,
right. Yes.
But, also... Okay, when Cirque du Soleil goes, who is going to occupy that with which money? It's too expensive. You don't need to spend that much money to do a good show, actually.
Interesting. Well, Dominique, we're coming to the end of our time. Thank you for coming on today. It was such a delight to have you. I have one more question, which I ask all of my guests, which is, what advice would you give to yourself at the beginning of your career?
I don't think, if I had given myself an advice, I think I would never have gone there. The thing, I have an advice. All my life in circus, show business in circus, if I wrote my life, it would be quite incredible with the people I worked with and what I've done and how I went there. And it's because and maybe because I was born in showbiz, in movie business, so stars never impressed me. I played with very famous people when I was 6 years old and annoying them, things like that. So I've never been, they were a friend of my father's friend, it's just I've never been shy. I've been admirative, but never shy with stars. So I met a lot of people, and each time an opportunity was given to me to do something for someone I admired or somebody whom I believed in, I went there. I came to America like that because I knew of the Big Apple Circus. It was just brand new. I did only one season at Lincoln Center by then. It was something new, and I have a friend who went to New York and helped them a little bit. He was a rigger. And he said, you should see this circus. I think they have a future. And when I was asked to come, I didn't wonder, I have to leave everything. I didn't have this kind of question. I came. And all the steps in my career, it's always meeting someone, ask me to do something that looks silly and I've never done before, and saying, yes, sure, why not? Just because it goes into what I like, what I wanted, the people I think are people that worth working with.
Yeah. And
see what happens. Sometimes it works well. In my case, it works well until the Circus Center thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't, and then fine, you do something else. It's not. But if you don't go for it when the opportunity knocks, even it seems very iffy for you and not very safe or whatever, you will never do anything.
That's great advice, because opportunities do not grow on trees. They do not come along every day. So,
and the other thing which goes with that, try to meet as many people as you can at the highest level of what you want to do, and know them. Yes. Because very often things come between them. They speak and say, "Oh yeah, I've met this guy. It's just he's nice. You should try." Who knows?
No, that's great advice. Dominique Jando, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It was an honor.
You're very welcome. It was my pleasure.
That was my interview with Dominique Jando. I don't have much to say at the end of this episode that I don't think that you won't be saying to your best friend who also listens to this podcast. No matter who you are, no matter what part of Circus you come from, I think that this is an episode that should and will spark a lot of conversation. And DM me, email me, let me know what you think. Instagram at @the_artist_athlete, Facebook The Artist Athlete. My website is www.theartistathlete.com. I'm on TikTok, The Artist Athlete. That sounded like a threat. And if you love what you're listening to and you want to hear even more, go to patreon.com/theartistathlete. And thanks for listening. I'll talk at you next week, friends, fans, and foes. The Artist Athlete podcast is supported solely by donations from people like you. Here's what some of those people have to say.
Hi, my name is Noah and I do hand balancing. Hi, my name is Woody and I do Leo walk. Thank you for listening to the Artist Athlete podcast.
Hi everyone, I'm Dominique, a ground acrobat, trapeze artist, and coach, currently bringing Circus to the extremely cold but very beautiful Northern Ontario, Canada. Circus has changed my life and I'm so grateful to everyone in this community. Find me on Instagram at DomUpsideDown or my website domupsidedown.com.
Aloha! My name is Beth Russell and I live on the beautiful island of Maui, Hawaii. I am an aerial artist and movement instructor specializing in chakra yoga to keep me balanced and grounded. I play with silks, trapeze, lyra, rope, acro, aerial yoga and dance, slacklining, pole, bungee, and climbing. Really anything that goes up and allows me to explore 3D space. You can find my dedicated aerial page on Instagram at Maui Aerialist. If you find yourself coming to Maui, let's play.
Hey there, friends, fans, and enemies. This is Chris Alston, Patreon of the Artist Athlete podcast, straps artist and lyra performer and acrobat out of Greenville, South Carolina. So if you're ever passing through, make sure to stop in and see me and my friends. We have a wonderful space and we'd love to see you.
Hi, my name is Erica Lee. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm an aerialist. I teach performing arts to elementary school during the day and do pole and swing and rope by night. I really, really like the Artist Athlete podcast because it gives me a lot of circus goals to look forward to. It gives me a lot of insight on what's going on around the world in circus, and that's why I'm Patreon.
Hello all. Thank you for tuning in to the Artist Athlete podcast. I am Opal Schwartz from Minneapolis, Minnesota. If you're ever in the cities, feel free to stop by the Aviary Minneapolis. It's a great time. With that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and goodbye.
Hey there, artists and athletes. This is Andy Smith, owner and artistic director at Saltaire Circus School in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. And I want to thank you for contributing to the Artist Athlete podcast. If you ever find yourself down in Florida, come check us out. Whether you're an artist, athlete, or someone ordinary just looking to be extraordinary, we got a place for you.